Lord states that no one, after lighting a lamp, hides it under a jar or puts it under a bed, but puts it on a lampstand. Very obvious statement, something we can all easily understand. Usually in modern day with electrical lighting, we have them at the top of the ceiling, so it lights up everywhere. If you put it under a bushel or under a bed, well, it's not going to produce much light. It's not going to benefit those who need light in order to be able to see. Now imagine a world without light, or imagine being in your home and it's like completely dark, pitch black. Why do we need light? We need light and able to do the things that we need to do. So light is very important, but we also need light or understanding or truth pertaining to the meaning and purpose of our existence. So this is partially what our Lord is talking about. The truth, the most essential truth for our existence, the whole purpose, the whole reason for our existence. Why are we created? We're created for God, to enter into relationship, to enter into a loving relationship with God and with each other. And in order to enter into this relationship with God and others, we need to know what the truth is. We need to know what God is like. We need to know how we need to interact with others. In other words, we need to understand human nature, which also entails understanding the commandments. So all of these things helps us to interact with God and with others. So imagine if God were to reveal the truth to one generation and then just to hide it for under a bed or something. It doesn't make sense. So God reveals the truth, and he wants that truth to be perpetuated, to be passed on from one person to the next, from one generation to the next. And so when God gives us the truth, we have a choice to make also. Are we going to allow that truth to radiate throughout our lives? Or are we going to put it under a bed or under a bushel basket? And it's interesting that many Catholics actually do that. They'll come to church on Sundays, and they're very pious on Sundays. They'll pray on Sundays, but then during the rest of the week, they're just like everyone else. You wouldn't really know that they were Christians or Catholics. In other words, they're not really living their faith to the full. They're not really making the effort to share the truth, to radiate the truth that is within them. Even in regards to our interior life, our spiritual life, if the truths of our faith are just something that we kind of store away or put on a shelf in addition to other things that we need to think about, then it's not the guiding principle of our lives. In other words, it's not the light that should be illuminating us and guiding us. And once again, many Catholics are like that, not just on Sundays, but even for us, throughout the day, we know we have to pray, we might have a routine, but so often we get caught up in certain works that we're doing or whatever, and we lose sight of God. And we shouldn't. Our Lord tells us to love the Lord your God with all your might, with all your strength, with your mind, with all your mind also. It's interesting to think about that. With all your mind. In other words, to understand fully and with all our hearts. So the idea is that we're constantly thinking about God and constantly acting in such a way that is pleasing to God. So we need to have this light within us. And we could say it's also the faith. In other words, it's one thing to know the truth, and it's another thing to live the truth. And when we live the truth, we are manifesting our faith in the truth. So the truth needs to enliven us. In other words, to determine how we live our lives. And if we allow this to happen, then the truth will impact others. But we are called to share the truth both by the example that we give as Christians, but also by the words that we say to others. I'm the type of person, I'm an introvert, and sometimes I'm just very, very content and happy to be all by myself. And sometimes when there's these big crowds and there's so much chatter. And you know, I just find it's like too much. I kind of pull back, but sometimes I just observe, and I wonder sometimes, it's interesting how much people have to talk about. They have so many things to talk about, but very rarely do they talk about the things of God. You know, people get together and they talk about so many different things. It's incredible. But so few people talk about the things of God, which is very, very unfortunate and very sad. It should be the number one thing that we ought to talk about. Today is the feast of the Korean martyrs Andrew Kim Tae-gon and Paul Chung Ha-sang and their companions. So Andrew Kim was a priest, and Paul Chung Ha-sang, he was a lay catechist, and it was during the 1800s there was very severe persecution of mostly the Catholics in Korea, and many of them were martyred for the faith. And it's just a reminder to us, you know, as Catholics, we're supposed to radiate the truth, we're supposed to manifest the truth, we're supposed to share the truth. Why is it that Catholics don't do it? Maybe they're afraid of what people might think of them. Maybe they're afraid to stand up for the truth. You know, we have the Life Chain coming up the first weekend in October also. Many Catholics come out, but the idea is that we have more and more people coming out, so we give a greater witness to the truth. But I believe some Catholics are afraid to come out, even though they may believe the truth that abortion is wrong. They're afraid that somebody passing by may recognize them. Well, it's a good thing right now because of the pandemic. If you wanted to, you could wear a mask, you could wear a hat, you could be disguised. So come out and join us. Don't be afraid. What happens when we are afraid? When we are afraid, we hide, we withdraw. We hide under the bed or under a bushel basket. And this is what our Lord is getting at. Fear is a terrible thing. And it's often because of fear that we don't share our faith. Oh, I'm worried what that person might think of me or what that person might say. And we should not be afraid. Now notice how our Lord goes on to say that, you know, for those who have, more will be given, and from those who do not have, even what they seem to have will be taken away. So those who have faith and manifest it, they will gain even greater faith. In other words, to do something that goes against your fears, such as participating in the life chain. Now, that's just one example. It causes you to practice courage. And when you practice that courage, that virtue of courage, you will have greater faith. You will know that you're capable of withstanding whatever opposition you may have to face in proclaiming the truth. But if you're afraid, what does that mean? If you're afraid of a little thing, such as participating in the life chain, well, what if greater persecution comes? And it's very likely that it will. I mean, when we look at the previous centuries, you know, in various countries there was persecution. Today we celebrate the Korean martyrs. Why was there persecution in Korea? Well, I don't know their history totally, but the ruler, for whatever reason, was opposed to Christianity. Was it because of political reasons? Possibly. Was it because of religious motives? Possibly. It could have been for any reason whatever. Doesn't matter. But the point is that sometimes the powers that be can suppress religions, including and especially Christianity. Now, it's not just these political figures, but Satan is ultimately behind it. So Satan will often inspire political leaders to suppress, especially the Catholic Church. You know, sometimes when we hear of other religions and their places of worship are desecrated or vandalized, it's like front page news and everybody's outraged. But when they burn down Catholic churches or vandalize the statues in churches, it's like, well, nobody really cares. In other words, there is a bias in society against the Catholic Church by people in positions of power, the media, the government leaders, all these people. So in other words, it's very, very likely that a time will come when we will be suppressed, opposed, persecuted, maybe even tortured and killed for our faith. Will you and I have the courage, the faith, to persevere through that? This is what it's all about. This is what our Lord is trying to get at. So for those who have faith, the truth, and live it and manifest it, they will receive even more. But those who have not, even the very little that they have, will be taken away. They will lose their faith. They will lose eternal salvation. Not something that I would want to risk. And so the ideal is that we be zealous in regards to our faith, that we are not afraid to share it, to manifest it, to allow the light of truth to shine on everyone around us.